You've heard the conventional view. Now prepare yourself to hear the other side. High school teachers Mike Margison and Justin Spears bring you the alternative view you didn't get in the classroom. Now here they are, Margison and Spears.
Good Wednesday evening to everybody out there. Welcome to an episode of The Other Side, back and better than ever, hopefully, after a week off. Just want to run through our normal contact information as normal. If you're catching us Saturday morning on replay, WCVL 92.1 1550am.com, WCVLam.com, that is. You can catch us replays Saturday morning at 8 a.m. You can catch us via the Cerberus Radio Network on the Radio Co app at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Saturday. You can catch different replays of the shows there. If you're looking for us on demand, you can find us on the Spreaker app. Download the Spreaker app on Android or iPhone devices, and you can follow the show The Other Side with Margison and Spears. If you search for that, you can find the catalog of all of our shows up to this point. You can get us on iTunes, and you can get us on Google Play. Both search The Other Side with Margison and Spears, and also too on our YouTube page, which is if you search The Other Side, you will find us on there as well. The website or the web address is Mike and Justin is the account name. So lots of different formats, whatever works for you. We hope that you're able to participate and listen and enjoy the show. Social media wise, you can get us on Facebook, The Other Side Podcast. You'll find us on there, TOS _ podcast. You can find us at TOS Podcast on Twitter. So just lots of different ways that you can reach out, communicate with us, give us feedback, give us suggestions, ideas, whatever it is that's on your mind. We would love to hear from you out there. So having gotten that out of the way, let's jump on into welcoming our other half of The Other Side, Mr. Mike Margison. Mike, what's going on, man?
Not much. Ready to talk about education.
Yeah. So, this is one that he and I have had some conversations here recently. And I know we've done an episode before in the past on education. And I think as we were kind of talking about what we wanted to do with this, I think we were both in agreement that, that show was more philosophical in terms of, the role of education and maybe some history about it and things of that nature. This show is going to really look at how school is structured and what it's doing to our kids. I mean, look, we are in education now. Both of us are in over 10 plus years. And we've seen, obviously in our time in the classroom a lot. And, we're still in public education because we passionately care about the kids that show up in our classrooms every single day. And that's not to say that every teacher doesn't feel that way. But, we see what's going on here. And there's something innate in this that is calling to us to say, this is not right. What we are seeing with the results that is produced, and I'm not talking about necessarily, although we will discuss this, I think, a little bit, standardized test scores or grades in a class or discipline problems or anything like that, but just what in general it's doing to our students. And I think that's what we really wanted to kind of focus on and talk a little bit tonight about is, look, why is school structured the way that it is? And why do we continue to keep going down this path where, we see and hear administrators and we hear and see those who are pro public ed talk about, things that, if they had a wish list, what would it look like? And, what would it be, if they could do A, B, and C. And I just keep looking at this going, that's not going to move the needle. We need to come up with some solutions that are going to help our students out, get them skills that they need, and be there to help them grow as individuals. And the current model that we have right now simply is not cutting it. So I want to kind of give a little bit more background here, and then I'll toss it over to you, Mike, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. So, one of the things that we're going through this week at our school here in the state of Indiana is I-STEP testing. And that has, and it always does, force us to have to adjust our schedule. And so what we have decided to do this year is we've gone to a 2-hour delay schedule. Now, when you hear that, that might not resonate with you very much. And let me fill you in on a little bit of background here. We have 70-minute blocks. We meet 5 periods a day, 70-minute periods. And so essentially with a 2-hour delay schedule, we're cut down, I think it's, what is it, about 52-minute schedule? Is that what that is, Mike?
42.
42, that's correct. Yeah, 42 minutes. So it obviously it cuts a half hour out of our class. And so that other time, right, is obviously then devoted to the time to test in the morning. And those that aren't testing, because not every student is testing right now, we get those students down into our auditorium where they can watch a movie, they can go into our field house and they can play some games and things of that nature, excuse me, or they can hang out in our foyer area. And all this is interconnected in one continuous area, and staff are, present and posted up in each area to just kind of keep an eye on things and make sure everybody's minding their P's and Q's and stuff. But I made a comment to Mike about how being down there and observing what is going on, how much of a breath of fresh air it is. Kids were laughing, kids were communicating. We constantly talk about how kids are always on their phones. And look, there were some kids that were on their devices, but kids were playing board games with each other. They were in the gym exercising. They were just sharing time with each other and talking to one another, sitting around, just, talking and having a good time and everything. And I just observed this and I go, my God, this is what we need. We need more of this. There's so much learning going on right now about how to be a person, about, interpersonal skills and, strategy of playing games and cooperation and just so much good stuff that was going on. But yet that's looked at as like, it's minimized, or, oh, this is just a one-off special thing. We wouldn't want to do this on a regular basis. And my question is, why not? So let me throw it over to you here, Mike. Why not? Why would we not want to build something like that into a routine? I won't even go to say every day, but what if we did it once or twice a week? Why wouldn't we want something like that?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would go with every day. I would take it all 180 days, but yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't. It literally makes no sense when the aura that comes off of these kids from their time down there. They're enjoying themselves, and for the most part, we don't see kids enjoying themselves in the classroom. Yeah, there's going to be a good lesson here, and there's pieces and parts that are going to spark them a little bit. But for the most part, let's call it like it is, Justin. Kids in school are bored. And that's not just, that is the case from K through 12. I've talked to elementary school teachers. I've talked to parents who have kids in school at the elementary school level. And then you and I see it at the high school level. They're disengaged. They're bored. They don't want to be there. They're coerced into doing stuff that they don't want to do. And then, look, first of all, kudos to our counselors for putting this together. This was a great idea, because what we used to do during the I-STEP testing is just keep the kids in their first period class for an extended period of time. But this is fantastic. So we take the first 2 hours, we block it off for testing, which, don't even get me started on this. I feel so bad for the sophomores that have to sit through this and go through this idiotic test that only a politician can come up with, who, then they're going to sit there and they're going to look at the scores and look down upon us. It's sickening to me. But, the kids who are not testing, they're down there. And like you say, there is socialization going on. We have certain metrics for, what we want kids to accomplish in school by attendance rate and this test score and that English language score. And, anything other than that, we don't really consider learning. We don't really consider physical education learning. We don't really consider art learning. But what about the kids who love physical education and love art? And, why not let them do that half of the day and then spend the other half doing, something that the state wants them to do or whatever? Yeah, I think that's a great question. Why not? I see no reason why not. And look, if it were up to me, I've talked about this before, the entire system would be voluntary. right? Just entry into the doorways would be voluntary. If you wanted to come, great. If you didn't want to show up, then that's your business. But the building would be something more like an opportunity for kids, and nothing coerced. If kids wanted to learn, the doors would be open. They could schedule class times. They could schedule meetings with teachers. They could schedule in groups. They could schedule topics. We want to learn about the Civil War. We don't know a lot about it. How long would that take? It's okay. That'll take about, maybe 3 weeks, 3 times a week, 1 hour sessions, and we'll cover everything that you want to cover. And then if there are other kids who want to go out and get an apprenticeship, then go out and do that. We could be facilitators in that manner. That's what I would like to see, but that's probably a pipe dream. I think that's probably way too far off into the future. But given the structures that we're confined to now, I think that we should have half of the day open. I think it should be, look, mandated coercive instruction for half the day, and then the rest of it just this, even if it's 2 hours like we have now. Keep it open, keep the kids in the building, and let them do what they want. The kids who need extra work, they can go and get extra work. The kids who want to learn a little bit more about that lesson that they were interested in, let them go learn about that. The ones who want to socialize, God bless, let them socialize. And the ones who want to run around and just get some energy out rather than being cooped up in a desk, let them run around the track or play basketball, for crying out loud. That's a great question. Why not? I can see no good reason why not.
Yeah, no doubt. And shout out to Brooke and Jill, our counselors. They did do a fantastic job of pulling this off and making it work. And that they are always continuously looking for ways to make these kinds of things. Because I know we gripe about it as teachers and we grovel about it because it does eat into our routine and stuff. But it's a huge headache administratively to pull this off. So kudos to them for making that work. But yeah, let's kind of hone in here on something that I think we're hitting at, and that is the structure of curriculum. Now, obviously, the constraints of time that we have here, and I don't want to get too philosophical into this. We've talked about the whole idea of schooling and how it's, the function of it and compulsory schooling and things of that nature. But, I think you were hitting on something there that's a really important item. And that is, by the time that kids get to us, right, let's say maybe even I'll give you your freshman year, but maybe by the time you're sophomore, juniors, although as freshmen now, they're taking college readiness and career readiness type things. And I know a lot of the curriculum has moved that way. What would it hurt to allow a more flexible curriculum? And, I think when you look at the intent behind what I guess you could call well-rounded curriculum, used to be based off the 3 R's, right? And now, you see that it's basically boiled down to math and English language arts. These kids are struggling monumentally in these areas because of the emphasis that's put on there. I mean, listen, without giving out, confidential information or, sharing beyond what I should share, if you were privy to the fail list that we have of students who are actively failing a math class right now, it is astronomical. It's beyond head scratching to see. Now, I'm not going to get into the blame game here. I'm not going to say it's the student's fault wholly. I'm not going to say it's the teacher's fault wholly. I'm not going to say it's the system's fault wholly. It's probably a combination of all of the above. But the reality is okay, so if that is a fact, right? That's a truth. That's not an opinion. That's not me spinning it. The fact is you have an abnormally high amount of students failing in a content area. The question needs to be, what are we going to do about it? Now, I always go to the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So what we tend to do in public education is we say, oh, you're failing Algebra 1. Well, first off, we're going to go ahead and put you in Algebra 2, but you're also going to retake Algebra 1. So we give them double the math. They already hate Algebra 1. We put them in, an extra math class. We tell them, oh, during this extended period of the day, excuse me, for 45 minutes, you're going to go into more math. And not only does that damage, I think, the psyche of the student, that's time, like you mentioned earlier, that's taken away from them being able to participate in something that they want. I shared the story with you of a student that I came across in the hallway a couple weeks ago, who at the end of the day, I don't have him in class right now, but I said, "Hey, bud, how's it going? How's this trimester going and everything?" And he said, "Oh, okay, not too bad." I said, "What's wrong? You seem kind of down." He says, "Well, I had to go to French for remediation. Basically, it's this 45-minute period that we have at the end of the day." And he says, "And I really wanted to go to jazz band." And that kind of stuck with me. Like, why? What are we doing here? This kid would be so excited about showing up for the day if he knew that he could get that 45 minutes of time at the end to go do something that clearly he has a passion for. Now, if you extrapolate that out, as you were saying, into cutting the day down by 2 hours, and at the end of the day, letting kids just roam the halls and go to classes that they want to go to. And you got to have some structure to it, but let them have some freedom. We always talk about giving kids choice and giving power, right?
I'm sorry, but that's the last thing that we do. You're right. We talk about giving kids choice and giving kids agency. And then that is the absolute last thing that we do. Sorry, I just had to.
No, you're absolutely fine. But I mean, I think about like the girls that would probably gravitate toward the FACS courses, or the guys that would drive down toward the computer aided drafting and shop classes. And I mean, we have a pretty vibrant ag class down at our school. And so maybe the kids that would be hanging down in the ag room and just soaking up every bit of information that they could get. And you know what? I'm willing to bet that in the course of them learning about those things, they're going to get introduced to, hey, there's some math that you need here, or there's some writing skills that you're going to need here, or there's some business acumen that you're going to need here. Why don't you go take a course on personal finance? Why don't you go take a course on writing professional letters and things of that nature, or interpersonal communications, or just a basic how to do basic math so that you understand how to apply that when you're measuring, how to measure out in a recipe or things of that nature. That's what these kids need. They don't need to be learning things that, some politician has arbitrarily decided is a quote unquote power standard for a class that they're never going to want to do anything with later on in their life.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I want to reiterate that point that you just said at the end. This is 100% the fault of politicians. I think that the people who are in charge, they have to abide by this because they have to follow the rules. But they're educators, and educators, I think, know what's good for kids, and educators know that politicians are the worst possible people to be involved in education. But I want to go back to the algebra thing, excuse me, that you were talking about. I was just trying to think of something that I absolutely just like have no interest in, that I can't stand and I don't want to learn about. And really, like, it's like the arts, that's what's coming to me, something like opera, or you know what I mean? Like something like that. I'm just trying to imagine if I was stuck in a class like that was classical music or opera or something like that, and I didn't like it and I wasn't engaged, and then somebody told me, you have to learn this. And if I didn't do well in it, then they stuck it, give me an extra hour of it, or made me do more of it. I mean, I would just want to pull my hair out and just say, let me do something I want. Let me go play soccer. Let me learn about economics, anything that I want to do, yet I'm not allowed to. Like I'm basically stuck in this prison where I'm not allowed to do any of the things that I enjoy. I mean, that would just be miserable. And if you think about it that way, you put yourself in the position of some of these kids that are literally miserable. You can see it in their faces, and you can see it in the way that they act. Look, a lot of these kids, when they act up, there's a tendency for staff to say, that's a bad kid. I don't think nobody ever really says that, but you know what I mean? We kind of, that kid's just this or that. No, they're acting out because they're stuck. They're literally stuck. These kids have interests like anybody else, but they're not being met. And as an institution, we've got to find a way to start meeting their interests. And if we don't buck the trend at some point, if we keep kicking this can down the road and just doing the same old, things are just going to get worse. Look, I'm looking at our PISA scores, which is the international test scores. That's the I can't think of what the acronym stands for, PISA. Anyway, we're doing worse. We're doing worse over the years. Our scores in 2015 were worse than our scores were in the year 2000. And this is the same for both reading and math. They actually did go up over a period of time in science, but the most recent scores are lower than the scores in 2012 and 2009. So whatever it is, my point here is what we're doing right now is not working. Look, we're trying every which direction to try and get, scores up or do better or whatever, but clearly it's not working. We see it and we're down in the trenches, we're in the grind, but anybody else can access the data and look at it and say, yeah, something's not working here. But we're also unwilling to change. That's what I don't get. And so what we're talking about here is completely changing the model and actually giving kids some agency. That's what I would like to see more than anything. And if you have to have these standards where kids are forced to go, if I was forced to go to opera, just like a kid is forced to go to algebra, do that for a small portion of the day, but then let the kid explore things that he wants to explore for the other half of the day. I just think that it's so obvious at this point, given the fact that the trend in assessment has been at best flatline and realistically going down over the decades.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, just on a personal level, I know I changed my major in college because of that. Because when I went to school, I was in College of Liberal Arts and Sciences as a history major, and I had to have foreign language. Well, I never excelled at foreign language. I struggled with language arts enough as it was in English language, but in foreign language, I bounced around from Spanish to French when I was in high school. So I never really honed in and focused in on that. Bouncing around was simply I was just chasing, the credits that I needed. I wasn't trying to get anything out of the class. And so when I show up to Butler my freshman year and they're telling me, hey, you got to have 200 higher level classes, I was starting at 103 and I was struggling there. And the guy was speaking complete Spanish in the classroom. And I said, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. So I switched over to the College of Business where a foreign language wasn't required solely because of that same idea. And it would have led me down the same path. I would have had to have done exponentially much more work in that just to get through that and satisfy that requirement. So yeah, I can personally attest to the frustration of that myself. And so, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Mike, when you talked about the idea of, what that would do to you and labeling a kid as a bad egg, or, we oftentimes like to talk about, oh, they just have a rough home life. And so we blame it on that. And yes, I'm sure that has, a portion to do with it. But I do know that when you look at the stress and anxiety, these kids are stressed to the max. And it's really all kind of, I don't want to say silly because I don't want to minimalize it. But when I hear kids talk about the stress that they have, it's completely brought on by the expectations of the system, whether that is propagated by, parents that put undue pressure on kids to be in the top of the class, or the expectation of having to go off to college, or whatever it might be. And I know kids have a tendency to kind of, drum things up and dramatize and over exaggerate and everything. But at the same time, though, I listen to them talk about what's going on. And a lot of it has to do with what we've put them through. And that just makes me feel absolutely guilty, guilt-ridden, and horrible that they're having to go through that. And so I know you and I have talked about, okay, we can acknowledge this and we can talk about it all we want, but what about solutions here, right? What solutions do we potentially see on the table with this? What could we do at North Montgomery High School, in our corporation, in our county, to try to combat this? What are some ideas that you have?
I would just love to see us institute some flexibility. Look, if you look at the requirements, we're required to be in school 180 days, and we're required to be there 6 hours at a time in order for it to count as a day. Though that's what I was able to find. There's no real indications as far as what has to be done with those 6 hours. Now, during this 2-hour delay schedule, because of ISTEP, where we are teaching 42-minute periods, this is so efficient. Justin, on a normal day or on a normal week without this, we have kids like, okay, you teach government and economics. You have 5 days, 70-minute periods. You have 350 minutes to teach government to students in a week. Do you really need 350 minutes to get the information to them that you want to get to them? I mean, is that all required of you?
Yeah, no, not at all.
It's me either. In economics or in world geography, I just don't need that much time. And look, we can be honest here. I don't know if our administrators are listening or not, but we can be honest. What does that extra time amount to other than busy work? I mean, truthfully.
No, yeah, I mean that's the thing. You and I specifically talked about this. Is the biggest. I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is with it, but ruse is this idea of bell-to-bell instruction, right? And that's, what you hear and that's what you see. That was a big deal. You got to get them with the bell ringer, hook them into the lesson. You got to, and we're doing some other things now in that 70-minute period to try to keep the kids engaged and stimulate them and things like that. But the bottom line is, look, if you can get your work done in 50 minutes and then you have 20 minutes to read, to study in another class, to just socialize, what's the harm in that?
I have no idea. It's always bugged me, but look, as from an instruction standpoint, I can do it in 45. I mean, with these 42-minute periods, it's perfect. It's efficient. There's no busy work. There are times when we need reinforcement, and you know this to be true. There are certain lessons that require reinforcement. Hey, I need to see if you got this. And there are other lessons that are pretty straightforward. And if you give them a worksheet, it's just because you have a whole bunch of time that you have to kill. That's literally the only reason. And I don't want to speak for you, but I can't even tell you how many paper, assignments that I give out that have no other purpose than to take up time in a 70-minute period, like literally no other purpose, because there's no reinforcement necessary. It's just that, what am I going to do? Am I going to lecture the entire time, or projects that we do? A lot of one of the big things behind my planning using, school projects, it's to get the kids, exploring and looking at data and being able to formulate information and grab information and organize it. That's all important. But I also have to remember that I have 350 minutes a week that I need to take up. And so I'll have pieces and portions of this project that are really unnecessary, but therein there is nothing other than a time killer. If you can cut all of the fat out and just instruct, right? That's it. Instruct, reinforce, and assess. I could do it in 200 minutes a week. It's not even a question. No problem at all. 5 days, 40 minutes a day. Perfect. And that's for any of the classes: AP Economics, AP Geography, Economics, or Geography. That's all I require. All the rest of it is filler. It's busy work. It's unnecessary. And it's just because we are married to this 7-hour day, and nobody is willing to take a look at, do we really need all this time? Do we really need this whole 180? Well, the 180 days, I don't even mind. The kids got to have somewhere to go, and that's fine. We want to be here for them. But do they need to be in a desk switching from Spanish to math to biology to geography to English? I mean, is this the best use of our time? And are the kids getting the most out of this? I don't think so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, think about that, folks. Let that sink in and kick that around in your mind and think about what was just said there and the validity of it and, the results, even for the kids that go home, and they're the valedictorians, all the way to the kid that has, a point something GPA. What are we doing here? How are we helping to service and grow our kids and basically help them become more informed, well-rounded citizens? I mean, that's what we're claiming that we're doing, but are we really doing that? And what needs to happen in order to kind of help stem the tide, so to speak, of what's going on in the classrooms and get kids engaged and get kids excited about learning again? individual drive to want to learn, to go and find something that is of interest, that is being and has been lost on our students, at least, by the time they get to us. And listen, I even see that in my fourth grader. When I try to introduce new concepts to him, he's like, Dad, I really don't want to have to learn this, because it doesn't interest him. He doesn't have a passion in it. So again, I hope that you can kick that around. For our listeners on WCVL AM and 1550 92.1, we're going to have to leave you here with this this week. For those of you listening on YouTube, you can hang around and listen to our bonus time. We're going to carry on forward here a little bit more. And thank you for being with us as always this week. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Again, our direct email is Margeson, MARGESON, and spears@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And until then, you have now heard The Other Side. Okay, for those of you that have hung around on YouTube, thank you for being with us. We're going to continue the conversation here. Mike, I want to pick up with something that we were talking about there toward the end, and that is the solutions aspect to this. And I know where this kind of is going to meet resistance, and, we can talk this talk, and a lot of people will agree with us in principle. Maybe they may not agree with some of the ideas that we've put out there for solutions or whatnot, but maybe they agree that, there needs to be some kind of change. Let's talk from a realistic standpoint here. What are the likelihood or odds that any kind of change like this gets instituted at a public school corporation in the state of Indiana, or piloted within a school? In other words, I guess what I'm getting at here is this going to have to be systemic change from within, or are we going to have to look for alternative methods to provide this type of an education model to students?
That's a really good question. Look, I'm piloting this 40-minute period with my advanced placement economics students, and it's a pretty full curriculum. But again, like I was saying beforehand, if you just cut the fat out, and I made an agreement. I've talked to you about this before, but I made an agreement with my students. I was like, look, we're in here for 70 minutes. Give me 40 minutes of your time, and I'll give you 30 minutes of your time, and you can do whatever you want with it. And basically, I'm not going to give you any busy work. I'm not going to give you any filler. I'm not going to bog you down. There's no projects. There's no extra research that you don't need to do. I'm not going to give you any of that. I'm just going to give you the information that you need. I'm going to teach it to you. I'm going to reinforce when we need to reinforce. I'm going to do these informal evaluations and assessments that are not going to be for a grade. I'm just going to use them, diagnostically to figure out where you are. And that's going to drive my instruction for the next lesson. And they do it. And I said, if you guys can buy into that, and I have to remind them from day to day, hey, look, guys, it's early because I have them first period. I need your focus. Give me 40 minutes, and then you'll get the last 30 to yourself. And they've bought in. They've done really well. So what I'm interested to see here is how our scores hold up against all of the other years that I've been teaching, where I've tried to fill the 70-minute period with a bunch of filler and a bunch of junk. And I got to be honest with you, if the scores are anything other than demonstrably worse, then we have to consider this method. Let's just say they're the same. All right. Let's not even say that this method's better. I'm not trying to say that, but let's say they're the same. In other words, I can get the same amount of information and the same results and the same successes in 40 minutes than I was getting in 70 minutes. What in the world would be the point in going to 70 minutes? What administrator could come up and say, yeah, but I think it's better off if you go 70 minutes? For what reason? For what purpose? Other than to put on a show? I mean, it literally makes no sense. So anyway, I'm getting around to answering your question. What I'm going to do is depending upon how this data comes. Now, look, if the test scores come back and everybody failed the AP test, then I might have to take a look at this and say, okay, fine, I was wrong. It doesn't work this way. We do need the extra time. I really don't see that happening. Let's say that it's even or better. I think I have a pretty legitimate claim to come in and say, listen, all right, I cut the fat out. I cut the homework out. I cut the assignments out. I cut the nonsense projects out. I just taught from a straight efficiency. And this can be done in a minimal period of time if you do it correctly. if you, I think this is one of the things that bogs down a lot of teachers, and I'm guessing especially new teachers, which is how do I keep the kids with me for an entire period? And if you can shorten that up, where it's just come in, focus, instruction, reinforcement, and then move on and get them through. And if you can get everything that you need to get done just packaged in a little bit tighter, then there would be no reason not to explore another method. And so at that point, I think administrators can really start to look at, all right, so is this extra time of filler and work the best use of our students' time? Or can they be socializing? Can they be exploring? Can they be looking at other opportunities? Can they, be joining clubs? Can they be working together and problem solving? Can they be playing board games and strategizing? Just more opportunities. Maybe I really don't think it would be that bad of an idea to teach up until lunch, take lunch, and then have the rest of the afternoon available for the kids to do what they want. But I think what we have to have first is data showing that it's at least plausible.
Yeah, no, I think that, listen, we've got a day coming up tomorrow where we have a number of people from our local community that are in various different business disciplines that are going to be coming in and talking to our students for a period of time, and answering questions and giving them information. And, basically, why not take that format and apply it in-house? Why not take that formula, because we surveyed the kids to find out what career fields they have passions in. I mean, you essentially have some form. Now, I'm not trying to make it sound like we're a university where there's, a la carte classes that you could take in pretty much anything. But, you could find a pretty good mix of classes to be able to enroll in where you would just be able to move around the building and take different types of classes. And it might be that you spend a couple of weeks in a production class with our fine arts teachers, or you spend a couple weeks down in the shop or in the ag room or whatever. The thing that jumped into my mind as we were talking about this is I know that we have some kids that are pretty rough with discipline. And I know that you've shared with me that one of the things that they like to do is make YouTube videos. And I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, gosh, imagine if we could harness that.
They were rapping.
Yeah. But I mean, imagine if you could take that spark that they have, because obviously, I'm not saying like, look, let's go turn them into professional YouTube rappers. That's not what I'm saying. But clearly they're drawn to that avenue or medium for a reason, right? Whether it's they like that, social media platform, or they like the music, the art of creating raps or whatever it is. Put them into our visual arts program and let our visual arts instructor work with them on how to produce good film, and put them in with the fine arts staff and let them look at production on the stage level and see, hey, is this maybe something that you would like? Let them go into drama class and see if there's a way to connect with them there, instead of, again, arbitrarily shoving them into classes because the state of Indiana has said you've got to have these credits in order to graduate, when they absolutely, not only are they just not going to do the work, they're going to become a thorn in everybody's side in that classroom. They're going to turn into attention seekers. They're going to bring the class to a grinding halt. You're going to question why you even wake up in the morning and go into school, all because they are told you have to pass this class.
Yeah, you have to learn about the physical geography of India. You can't do this X, Y, and Z that you're actually passionate about.
Right. Yeah. And again, it could be anything. I mean, maybe the kid is maybe the kid hangs out in his garage at home with dad and he loves welding, or he plays around with coding on the computer, and so he wants to learn how to code. I'm not just saying like, okay, well, let him go code. Let him learn the business end of that. Let him look at the career field potentials. Let him learn about some of the different, what kind of writing do you need to do as a coder, as an engineer. Let him get exposure to the things that fit into the pathways that they've identified. And listen, it may change. And that's fine. I'm not trying to say the moment that they walk in our building as freshmen, they need to have it all figured out. I've switched my career field multiple times as an adult. But if you can at least connect with them and make learning fun, I think you would see your discipline problems go down. I think you would see scores go up, whether it be test scores or grades in the classroom. I think overall there would just be a sense that school is fun again. Like I have a reason for wanting to get up and go in. I'm excited to find out what I'm going to learn about A, B, or C today, instead of, oh my God, I've got to go sit in Spears' class and listen to him drone on about supply and demand. I'm never going to use this one day in my life. Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to calculate elasticity? Why do I have to show the value of money? This doesn't mean anything to me. I don't want to be here. I would rather be in a fax class learning how to sew or cook or, whatever it is. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but that's the concept. And if we can't embrace that either systemically or at the local level, then we're going to keep spinning our wheels with this current model that we have.
I want to repeat something that John Taylor Gatto said. When a former New York Teacher of the Year, and when he left education, he said, look, I can't remember the exact quote. He goes, he was trying to get out of it. And he said, just give me a profession where I don't have to harm kids anymore and I'll do it. And that's what I feel like so much when I get some of these kids who are, I'm using quotes here, difficult, like difficult kid. They're not difficult kids, but that's, that they're difficult in this model because it doesn't work for them. But I feel like we're harming them when I'm sitting them down in the chair and you got to be here for 70 minutes. And it's rough for me. I've done a lot. We've done a lot over the last 2 years, not soul searching, but you know what I mean? We've really been having a difficult time and struggling with this, and figuring out is this the best use of our time and our energy? And are we serving these kids? We give lip service to it. We say that we are, and we want to, but are we really?
Right. And I mean, that, and I'm going to say this, and again, this is no disrespect to what we're doing in our school corporation. We are focusing a lot on brain function and brain activity. And we went through an in-service the other day where we were shown a clip of Oprah from 60 Minutes. And she was talking about trauma in her life and how it had she come to the realization that, she had somebody in her life that had helped her get through what she had been through. And it was a teacher, right? And so the connection here is, we need to make connections with our students. And I agree with that. I don't disagree one bit with that. What I'm saying is, and I think this is kind of what you were hitting on there as well, is how much good, what net good does it do us to sit down and talk to our students about what's going on and building connections and relationships with them, if we then turn around and subject them to, as you talked about, 350 minutes a week of arbitrary curriculum that some politician in Indianapolis has decided needs to be taught to students who's never spent a day of his or her life in a classroom. So, when you look at just that alone, I'm not even touching content. My goodness. That's the whole purpose behind this podcast, is to take on the content of what's in these books and what's being filled into these kids' minds about facts and the way that things are presented. That in and of itself is enough to say that is doing a lot of damage to students as well. We have to be honest with ourselves about that. If we think that we're just the good guys in the room and that we're only doing good and that we have no culpability in why they feel the way that they do, why they're stressed out beyond the max and they can't cope or handle anything, then we're fooling ourselves.
Great point. I mean, that's it. And I'd like to see changes wholesale, but it's got to be done institutionally. Like I said, I'm trying it at the local level, just in my classroom with one of my classes. But we need to see some wholesale institutional changes where educators who are professionals here, not the politicians, they don't have degrees in education, are given the flexibility to teach these kids in the way that we see best fit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us, Mike, I think, unless you have anything else that you want to add to the discussion.
No, I think we covered it all. My wife texted me during this, and I'm in the basement. There's the first floor, and then she's up in the second floor, and she texts me and she said, "Why are you yelling?" So,
got you fired up tonight.
apparently. So yeah, if I'm coming across loud in this, I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, it shows that we're passionate about this, and we really are. And I know that we can have disagreements professionally with some of our colleagues about this type of stuff. And I'll defend the way that I know that we feel about this, because I feel like it's what's best for the students. And certainly, I would be more than happy to talk to somebody who thinks that the current system that we have is almost there. We just need more money or more.
I would love to hear
that. I don't see that as a solution. I don't know why you would want to do that. It'd be like dumping gasoline on a fire, and just really just throwing money away. And there's so much more that can be done besides just funding. You see all these things going on with strikes and walkouts and stuff in several states, and it just it makes you sad. It really does, because I think it's more that becomes more of the politics in the classroom than anything, and that's when it starts hurting the kids as well. So yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Again, as I said to our radio audience, we would appreciate any comments, questions, feedback that you have. You can hit us up on our social media platforms, our email, drop us a like, give us a share, subscribe on YouTube, all that jazz. We're looking to continue to build this platform out. We appreciate the support that we get from our listeners each and every week. Mike, I know I've had some guys that have come to me on a consistent basis now and said, hey, I'm enjoying the show. I appreciate what you guys are doing. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah, the best thing you can do for us is just help share that out and bring more people in and listening. And we always appreciate the support that we get from our listeners. So again, thanks for tuning in this week. We'll be back with you next week. I think, are going to have a special guest. I haven't talked to Mike about this yet, but I think we're going to have a special guest with us this next week that relates somewhat to what we've been talking about.
Joy Pullman.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to have her on. We'll talk a little bit more about that announcement. I'll put some stuff up on social media once I get that confirmed. So keep your ears posted for that, and we'll see you next week on The Other Side.
Thanks for listening. And remember, you're not fully informed until you've heard The Other Side.